Hi everybody, welcome to Dynamo Sword Channel. I'm David, and today on Dynamo Sword Channel, I will be presenting a new series on do-it-yourself customizations. In the production sword market, especially in the budget market, many swords can come with various fit and finish issues. Some of these can be serious and deserve to be returned, but many are simply cosmetic and can be remedied at home with the proper tools, materials, and knowledge. With this series, I hope to help teach and guide many of you to not only have the knowledge and ability to do these customizations, but also to build the confidence to try your hand at home customizations. So in this first video, I will be showing you how to disassemble a external nut medieval sword, as well as do a leather grip rewrap on the handle. So next we will look at the sword I've chosen to customize, the tools needed, and then we will disassemble the sword. So stay tuned. Hi and welcome back. So the sword I have decided to customize today is my windlass sword of Roven. Now this is an older sword that has been recently reissued by a contract with Cult of Athena, but was in the windlass catalog for many years. This sword, I originally owned a previous version of the sword and actually sold on the SBG Classifieds, and when this one came up, I decided I needed it again and got a new one. So, as you can see, this sword has what is pretty common with some windlass medieval swords is an external nut. Now, how this external nut works is that the sword is full tang, and then at the end, the pommel slides down, and then rather than a peen, this sword will have this little round external nut that can be screwed off to disassemble the sword. So I will show you the tools you will need to do this customization, as well as how to do it. So first, let's look at the tools. So primarily what you're going to need is a pair of pliers or vice grips or crescent wrench. I prefer vice grips just because they just kind of clamp on and they're easy to screw on, screw off. These nuts don't need to be very tight. Just tight enough, and over threading can potentially be an issue if you do strip it or go. The other issue is when since these are round and smooth and kind of meant to simulate a peen block, if you put too much force on them, you can definitely scratch up the finish, which some people might not like. If they like to display and show their swords at a high polish and aesthetic look. One solution I've noticed to kind of alleviate the scratching of the external nut is to get one of these little elastic hair ties, or even use like leather, or you can even use like duct tape or something, kind of whatever you have lying around, just to kind of cushion the kind of the vice grips or the pliers from kind of pulling and scratching up the pommel. So normally what you'll do is you'll just kind of wrap this around a few times and get it snug. It doesn't need to be like tight, because when you apply the vice grip or the pliers, it's gonna kind of cinch up itself. So just kind of pinch it on like that, and then give it a couple twists, and that should be enough to loosen it, usually to where you can get it off by hand. But here we'll go again. There we go. So now that it's loose, just take the external nut off and set it aside, and then you should be able to work the pommel off pretty cleanly. Now this is going to be the full pommel. As you can see, they did use a little epoxy to kind of tighten it. That's not going to really affect us. It looks like that was also just kind of glued where the leather was as well, and we kind of pulled up some of the leather finish. But as you can see on the tang, there is some epoxy applied. Now, I know some people don't like to see epoxy on their handles, but this is primarily to help reinforce, the grip from potentially shifting. I mean, with production swords, they are mass produced, so not everything is made to like custom exact. So some of these swords can definitely, kind of come, a little loose or something, or just to make it extra tight, they'll add that, that epoxy. So since this one is epoxies, as ironically opposed to the older sort of Roven that I had, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get one more tool, and then I'll be right back. All right, so the tool I went to grab was, of course, a little rubber mallet that I have for help in disassembling swords. Rubber mallets are nice because, unlike metal hammers, they won't bang up and ding up the finish of your guards and pommels and suba, things like that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of give it a few light taps. And you'll start seeing that handle start coming loose. Hopefully it'll be kind of loose enough to work at, but this is kind of a good thing, because I know a lot of you can be scared if the blade is the tang is epoxied on, and worrying about damaging the sword or something if it is epoxied. Now sometimes this epoxy can be a little too tight, and this one's working off pretty well, but I know that some of them you can technically kind of heat up the epoxy. Some people will use like a high heat blow dryer if they have it, if the epoxy is soft enough. Since this is kind of more of the thicker JB Weld type, you could also kind of try to oven bake it, which of course is risky, sticking your sword in the oven. But if you're going to regrip the wrap, you're not going to have to worry about burning or melting the grip wrap anyway. But so we'll just kind of keep working this off, and then more than likely we might have to kind of work that down with another tool. For example, I have these needle nose here. I might be able to work the handle down by simply kind of hitting those, or actually I have something better, so I'll go grab that real quick and be right back. All right, so what I grabbed is just a little metal file that I have. Normally I use this for kind of working and shaping things down as far as metal, but it will serve the purpose of kind of working this handle down as we hammer. So what you'll want to do is just kind of get it around like that, and we'll just kind of hammer this down as it goes. As you see, it's already coming down. So like I said, this is a good thing too if you guys are not worried about doing customizations, that these grips are tight and put on well, so you don't have to worry about them coming off. I know a lot of people, again, don't like the idea of having, there we go, having epoxy on their tangs, but you know, it serves its purpose in keeping the sword nice and tight, especially on these production budget swords where it can be a risk. And I don't know if you noticed something else I'm doing, but I'm kind of working each side. This not only helps it work off flushly, but also alleviates potential damage to the wood core. All right, and there we have it. Nice and off. I see a lot of epoxy on me, on the table, and if you're worried about it being loose after, you can always add a little extra epoxy or something to refill it. So let's take this thing completely apart. So it looks like the guard might have a little epoxy on there too. We don't really need to take the guard off. So what we'll do is we'll just probably hammer that back out, but that gives you a good look at a windlass full tang, and of course just the blade shoulders, and you know, kind of how the guards assemble and things. So with the, actually I will take off the guard because I'll show you guys kind of how these guards are. I know a lot of you worry about the, you know, as it's known, the windlass gap on these swords, but as you can see, that gap does not go all the way down to the tang. So there is an opening here, but the tang slot is you know, flush with the actual tang, and then the blade shoulders just rest in these grooves here. I know these grooves are a little wider than some people like, but they're not detrimental, and they don't really affect you know, the sword itself, especially like with anything like water or anything getting down there. It's not going to get into the handle. The handle is going to be, you know, nice and solid and flush against that bottom piece of the guard, to where only the you know, kind of tang slot is really in. I mean, moisture can get in there, but it's not going to be super bad or anything. So yeah, and then of course you can see the tang shoulders. I know a lot of people don't really like to see, you know, how square they are, but that's just going to be something that you're going to see in budget swords, and even things that I've seen on, you know, higher end production swords, especially ones with ricassos like this Roven has. Now you can kind of see the thickness of the ricasso. So what a ricasso is it's basically a swelling of the blade at the base to reinforce the sword, but also in certain circumstances give you kind of a half sorting grip on the sword, so you can come in, do some thrusting, things like that. Ricassos were very popular on later period medieval European swords. For example, this one, which is a type 12A, or type 20A, excuse me, type 20A, and as well as type 19s, and even later period great swords and bastard war swords. And a lot of that has to do with just having that extra for half sorting and things. The techniques were definitely, the martial arts was definitely at its peak as far as dueling and things in that Renaissance, later medieval period. So that is definitely, you know, something that you will see on most 15th and even early 16th century long swords, arming swords, and war swords.